Welcome, everyone, to Post Crisis Chat, the Brave and the Bold edition. I'm your co host, Randy, and with me is the ever technologically impaired.
Cookie, and yeah, you can kiss my big flabby white butt on that technical impaired stuff. Just because I don't sit in front of the computer for 24 hours a day. So, anyways, enough with the bickering. If you're a first-time viewer, we want to welcome you. Please remember to smash that like button and subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell so that we can notify you next week when we upload our next episode.
It is such a small thing to do, and it really helps to grow the channel. If you're not a first time viewer, we want to welcome you back. We are so thankful that you're here.
If you're one of those people that just can't get enough of Crisis Chat, you might want to check out our socials. If you're curious, you can find us on Blue Sky, and we're also on Patreon. The cool thing is Patreon, they get access to the Post Crisis Chat Book Club. Let's kick it over to my co host. He's going to explain that to you.
We tell you a week ahead of time which issues we're going to be recording a show for and give you a chance to comment on those issues. We'll read some of those comments on the air once we get some. So far, nobody's commented yet, but that's okay.
We do this for the love of it. We appreciate people viewing and commenting, but don't want to do it. That's okay. We're still here for you. And then this is the part of the show where I have to advise our viewers that we will be talking about decades old spoilers. And I do mean decades old. Today we're going to be talking about. Okay, this is where we usually to say we're going to be talking about Saga of the Swamp Thing. But we're steering away a little bit. We're doing a special issue.
Yep.
We're doing DC Comics Presents 85. That is this issue here with Superman and Swamp Thing.
Yeah, and the reason we're doing this issue is because it is a Swamp Thing issue. And believe it or not, it was actually written by Alan Moore. When I came across this, I was like, whoa, we have to cover this. This is really cool that he did a Superman crossover with Swamp Thing. I do also want to mention that this was penciled by Rick Veitch, inked by Al Williamson, with a cover by Rich Veitch as well.
The cover looks nice. Got to give him credit. The cover I'm very impressed with.
Yeah, I literally wrote down in my notes, this cover is so dope. It's by Rick Veitch, who is quickly becoming a favorite artist of mine. Superman looks very angry and powerful on the cover, and Swamp Thing is flinching away from him. The colors on here are just gorgeous. This is probably one of the best covers I've seen in terms of Superman covers. Definitely the best Superman Swamp Thing crossover cover.
It almost looks like if you look at Swamp Thing, he looks almost like the coloring is painted.
Yeah, I was noticing that too. This, in fact, looks like a painted cover. We get into the book. On the first page, we see Clark Kent driving a car down the road. He is hallucinating. The text mentions that he has bruised his knee and he can feel the pain, which is odd because Superman doesn't usually feel pain. In the bottom panel, Superman looks like hell. He looks very out of it and like he hasn't shaved in days, which is definitely not normal for Superman or Clark to appear disheveled like that.
No, he's definitely sporting that Superman 3 look.
I would pretend to know what you're talking about, but 70s Superman movies are not my thing.
That is sacrilegious because the original Superman, I'm sorry, the first two Superman movies are amazing.
Eh,
I don't understand how you can call yourself a comic book fan, or even let alone how can you call yourself a Superman fan? That
I've
is just
I've
you
never
are
really
not a
claimed to
Superman
be a
fan.
Superman fan.
You telling me you've been reading Superman and you've been getting into him?
I read John Byrne's Superman. I did read that, and it was pretty good. But also,
All right,
the Superman movies are just products of their time. They don't look very good.
they're great.
And
They're
the
great
Superman
movies.
movies aren't comics; they're movies.
Yeah, I know, but I'm just saying, Superman movies, the '70s movies are awesome. I'm sure people in the comments would agree with me. We better move on before I reach through here and smack you with kryptonite.
So on the next page, we see a gorgeous splash page with some kind of skull with tusks. I'm not really sure what it's supposed to be, an elephant or something, but whatever it is, the art is gorgeous. Below that, we get Superman driving down the road as the road passes between a swampy area. Hmm.
Whatever it is definitely alien because it looks like the teeth are on the sides, or it's got the tusks coming up, And then if you look at on each side, it looks like that's where the teeth are. Either that or their little tiny arms.
Yep. We flash back, or possibly hallucinate, to Clark at a conference, and he is apparently there with Lana Lang, which is odd because, as far as I know, she did not work at the Daily Planet. She maintained a farm back in Smallville. At least at the time, that's what John Byrne had led me to believe.
I didn't know that either. I think because this is still technically pre-crisis, so I don't remember too much about Superman pre-crisis. I don't even know if she was actually a friend from the farm, like from Smallville, or not. I just know basically from Burns' reboot and Man of Steel and then onwards.
Hmm. I bet that might have something to do with it, and the fact that it's pre-crisis. This is potentially a pre-crisis issue. I hadn't thought about that, and this came out 3, 4 months after Crisis started, but I bet you the script was turned in before that.
More than likely, especially with an Alan Moore script. He writes a script like a freaking novel, and then the artist has to go in and basically go off of that of how they're going to plan everything out. I could see this being 6 months before Crisis even hit the shelves.
A scientist is talking about a tiny patch of living fungus that was found on a meteorite. The scientist is fascinated with the fact that this fungus survived in space. I wonder if that might have anything to do with what's going to happen in our story. Lana asks a question about how the fungus compares to Superman, and the scientist says that Superman cannot be expected to lie still through years of research. We see a close up of Clark's eyes, and he says, "From Krypton?" And this is another one of the Alan Moore things where he likes to focus on eyes. We just get closer and closer to Clark Kent's eye. It's kind of weird.
But it works, especially in this sense, because as each time you're getting closer, you're seeing how he's using his, I forget, is it called microscopic vision? That's how I got it. I thought it was funny how they refer to, oh, we have an alien living among us and it's Superman. And I was thinking, um, this is the DC universe at kind of the height of the DC universe. You got more than one bloody alien on the planet. I mean, you got the Martian Manhunter, you got Supergirl. Superman is not the only alien here.
Yes, yeah, no doubt. Moving on to the next page, we see that Clark seems a little out of it, and Lana helps him outside. Clark remembers an entry from the almanac on Krypton about this fungus the scientist has discovered. The fungus is unusual and dangerous. The preferred growth medium is actually inside the bloodstream. It causes fear, hallucination, overexertion, etc. The fatality rate is 92%, which would explain why Clark is running away in the previous panels. Now, I want to also mention at this point, this is definitely pre-crisis. Been recently reading Burns' post-crisis Superman, and he did not have a Krypton almanac at the time this was published. It may have been something that came back later, but this definitely tells me that this was pre-crisis, despite the date on it.
What's interesting about that is even though it's pre-crisis, the origins never changed that much. It's he came here to Earth as a baby, and I don't recall him having that much Kryptonian material with him. It still begs the question: where the hell did he get a Kryptonian almanac from?
Pre-crisis, he had Kryptonian everything. I think he at some point went back in the past and actually visited the real Krypton. The Silver Age Superman stories were just whatever they wanted to throw in, the kitchen sink, a bunch of kryptonite, the whole planet of Krypton. I mean, it really covered just about everything.
They seemed like they were fun. I mean, I've never read them, but knowing what I do know about them, like hearing about them, they sound like they were at least fun. But it does take away from the fact that it's like, dude, you're not supposed to know that much about Krypton, and yet you seem to have all this resources about Krypton. A little confused to me.
Then next we flash back to the day after the press conference, and Clark is having a bout of incapacitation. Clark gets a paper cut, which is a new experience for him. He realizes that he is no longer invulnerable. Through experimentation, he discovers he can feel pain, his x ray vision has gone away. He considers flying home, but decides against it, afraid that he'll drop out of the sky, so he decides to take the train home. I thought that was kind of neat that Superman actually got taken down a peg. He gets to see what it's like, for the rest of us for a short time.
I kind of liked it. The only thing I thought was, and it was a terrible joke to think of at the time of reading it, but I was, dude, you're human now. So this would be the perfect time to take Lois to bed because you're actually going to feel something and you're not going to kill her in the process.
Not even going to touch that one. That night, the hallucinations begin. Clark's empty Superman suit and his empty Clark Kent suit that he wears to work start arguing with each other. Superman tells them both to shut up because they aren't real. It's good that he hasn't quite lost it that much yet. He realizes that his suits should not be talking to each other, or to him, for that matter.
I find it interesting that the side that's telling him to give up is essentially the human side. Clark Kent is the one that's like saying, dude, just give up and die. But Superman's like, no, you fight. I don't know if it was intentional, but that almost kind of gives you a really interesting look into the psyche of Superman. One could say, does he look at humanity as inferior?
Hmm, that's a good point I hadn't thought of. Mostly because honestly, I think at this point in the comic book, I was falling asleep because I was that uninterested in it. We'll get to more about that later, though. The next day, his super hearing returns when he is unprepared for it. The return is painful, and later he knocks a cup off of his desk and he can't catch it fast enough. Superman continues to learn what it's like to be human. He goes and asks the scientist for the meteorite with a fungus on it. The scientist agrees to let Superman borrow it because, I mean, why wouldn't you? It's a valuable, priceless thing that's, Superman, obviously, he must be a good guy and he never turns into a bad guy ever. And
Dude,
Superman,
it's it's Superman. If Superman comes to your house and asks for a night with your wife, you're going to say, "You're Superman, of course." How am I going to say no to that? You just you can't say no to Superman.
hmm, yeah, maybe. Superman tries to examine the fungus, but his microscopic vision fails him, and Superman realizes he is going to die. I don't know how we get from I've got a really bad cold, maybe the flu, to oh my god, I'm going to die, but he does. So then Superman wants to be alone to die, but he can't fly that far. He considers going to someone in the superhero community, but ultimately dismisses the plan and buys a used car. He takes off in the car for the one place in America without superheroes, which is apparently the South. Next, we see Superman wreck his car. That's it.
I got nothing on that one. I guess the only thing I do have to say is I thought it was kind of an interesting choice artistically of pointing out which cities to go to. He's got his finger on Coast City, Central City,
Mm-hmm.
and then Star City. The only three superheroes we see are Flash, Wonder Woman, and Batman. And the other two, it looks like it's Lana and Jimmy. And so I was just kind of thinking, like, for me, artistically, I'm thinking if my finger is on Coast City, then above that finger, I'm going to draw a picture of Green Lantern. And then Central City would be the Flash, Star City would be Green Arrow. I
Yeah, it
don't know
wasn't
what
a.
the artist was thinking here.
It seems like there wasn't a lot of thought put into this panel.
And since this isn't going to make it into the actual show part, am I the only one that looks like that thinks that Lana looks like she's having an orgasm?
I didn't pay that much attention to it,
I
honestly.
just noticed it now. I literally just saw it now. I was like, what the hell's going on with Lana's face?
I do want to point out one of the better pieces of art in here is Superman crashing his car. That whole progression with the where we see Superman falling asleep at the wheel, the car actually exiting the panel, and then the car turning around upside down with the giant sound effects. This is probably the most well drawn panel in the entire book, and it's a car crash.
I thought the next page was not too bad too, except for there was one panel that I was kind of like meh on, but I thought the next page actually had some good work on it too.
Moving on to the next page, we see Superman leave the fiery crash while still on fire himself and start hallucinating that he is back home on Krypton. I don't know, this page just looks kind of basic. The face in the middle, that's a really good face. Superman's freaked out. He's got the flames around his head. His head is highlighted in black. He's calling out for Lois and Kara and asking where everybody is. That panel's pretty good. I don't know about the rest of this page though.
I think this is where I'm going to disagree. I think the layout is pretty good. The top is kind of basic. Okay, car on fire, bust the door open, and Like I feel like modern artists could probably do a little bit more with that. And then I thought the bottom part, like actually now looking at it, I did not realize that's actually kind of cool of him walking through the swamp on fire, but it's two panels and then almost overlaid on top of it is the picture of him back on the Krypton forest, the Scarlet Forest, or I forget what they called it in this. Scarlet Jungles. But I like the way that they put it on top of the two panels.
Yeah,
Almost kind of symbolizes, okay, that's the hallucination.
definitely. I'll give it some credit that I didn't before. You're right about that. We're getting to see things from Superman's perspective. That is pretty cool. Next, we see Swamp Thing discover Clark. Clark's clothes are charred. Swamp Thing saw the crash and wonders why Clark isn't dead, and also starts to wonder who Clark is. Swamp Thing's face here looks good. I wouldn't say great. It's a little basic, especially for Veitch. I really like the guy's art, but on this book, it seems like it was probably a little rushed.
It's not the best Veitch artwork I've seen. I do like Swamp Thing's face just because I thought they did a good job. That's a sad, concerned look on Swamp Thing. Don't even have to read the caption to get that feeling off that face. This looks like the Swamp Thing before he started metamorphosize into what he's becoming in the regular series.
That's a good point, and that's another good indicator that this is probably pre-crisis. Maybe even this was completely scripted, penciled, and turned in before they even knew crisis was happening, possibly. With a thing like DC Presents, you can kind of play fast and loose with the continuity.
Yeah, exactly.
Next, we switch back to Superman's hallucinations. They are telling them he has spent his entire life running from the truth that is the death of his planet. Clark's hallucinations say it's time for Clark to join them in extinction. The kryptonite creatures, especially the, I don't know, elephant tusk, giant mouth looking things, I really enjoy whatever these things are. I don't know what they are, but the artwork here is really good. My issue with the artwork here is the lack of backgrounds. The backgrounds that are there are very generic, but more than half of it is just plain white or pink background. That's what makes it feel rushed, and that's what kind of makes me dislike the art a little bit. But when you actually stop to pause and look at those creatures, those are just spectacular.
I feel like the pink background is a creative choice to symbolize that this is a hallucination, of sort of like a fever dream.
Okay, I can kind of see that. Next, we switch back to Swamp Thing, noting that Superman's face is extremely familiar. Swamp Thing takes the rock from Clark's hand and examines it, the moss on the meteorite noting that he does not recognize it, which is interesting that he can recognize alien materials. Swamp Thing connects with the moss and actually gets to see Krypton. Swamp Thing doesn't seem to like it very much and drops it to the ground, realizing that it is alien and from another world.
To me, that's interesting. I wonder if this is something that might get touched on later on in the future of the Swamp Thing comic book. Are we going to see Swamp Thing dealing with alien plant life again? Because
Oh, we
Bellamore is
definitely
very
are.
known for doing.
I don't want to give
I
too much
wasn't going to
away, but
spoil it,
that's
but yeah,
100%.
I know we are too. And it's actually something I'm really looking forward to because I've never read it, but I know about it and I've always wanted to read it.
I won't give away my opinion on it yet. We'll get there. Swamp Thing realizes who Clark is while Clark continues to hallucinate that the creatures from Krypton are still trying to kill him. Swamp Thing opens up Clark's jacket and finds the famous Superman S underneath. At that point, Clark sits up and screams at Swamp Thing to get away from him.
And remember, it's not an S, it's a winding river that represents hope.
Literally never heard that before.
It's from frickin' Man of Steel, the movie.
Oh, yeah, it's been a while.
To be fair, if I had a strange swamp creature undressing me, I would probably freak out too.
No, that's hot.
Dude, I've seen some hentai that starts out like this.
He does have the vines. On the next page, we see Swamp Thing getting hit square in the chest with Superman's heat vision eye lasers. Swamp Thing notes that he has a hole in his chest, but that'll heal. Swamp Thing also notes his visitor is ranting at empty air. The visitor's skin glistens slick with feverish perspiration. Superman starts to use his powers to tear up areas of the swamp, and Swamp Thing realizes that the most powerful creature on Earth has, quote, gone mad. Looking at the art here, this is where the book really starts to feel rushed. This art is very basic, very rushed, not hardly any detail. It kind of kills the enjoyment for me. Not that I was enjoying it that much in the first place, but what little bit there was, the faces up to this point have been very expressive, and starting to lose some of that at this point in the book.
It's really hard sometimes to judge too because we're like late 30, mid 40-year-old men in the year 2025. I mean, I don't know when this is actually going to air. It could be 2026 by the time the fans actually see this.
Hmm.
We're spoiled on artwork. We've seen some amazingly drawn comics, and it's kind of a different era now. I kind of feel bad judging some of these artists at that point because it was a
Okay,
totally different time.
I'm disagree with that, and I'm going to tell you why. Because very recently, just the past week or so, I have been reading Chris Claremont on Uncanny X-Men. Dave Cockrum, oh my God, that dude, he just nails it every single issue, every single panel. And this is 10 plus years before Swamp Thing, I believe. And after seeing that, comparing it to this, there's just no excuse. I get it. The excuse is that they were rushed. That's got to be it. I can't think of any other reason why. And I love Rick Veitch's artwork. I mean, I have praised him repeatedly when he has been the artist on Swamp Thing, and he is not doing a great job with it here, especially the further along we get in the book. But that's why I
Yeah, I
disagree
mean,
with you
I'm
because
not.
I've seen the art from 10 years before this, and it is so much better than this.
I mean, I'm not going to disagree with the fact. Obviously, he was rushed, and it's because the fact that we know what he's capable of.
Hmm.
So you can tell when you see an artist and like how good they are, and if their artwork's not up to par, then typically it seems like they've been rushed to get the book out. At that point in time, I believe editorial was pretty heavy-handed on we need to get stuff out on time. At that point, there was a lot of can't compare, let's say, Jim Aparo to Dave Cockrum. I like Cockrum and I like Aparo, but it's like they're way, way different styles. And Aparo kicked butt on certain books.
They are. And, speaking of getting things out on time, Jim Lee never would have survived that time period where things actually had to be on time in order for you to keep your job. But I digress.
90% of the artists that came out of the late 90s up until now wouldn't be able to survive back then. Can you imagine Brian Hitch or Frank Quitely?
No, With artists like that, you really need to get their entire arc in the can and done before you release the first issue.
Exactly.
Especially Jim Lee, you've got to give him 3 year head start on the book because, yeah, Superman continues to use his powers at full blast to tear up the swamp. Swamp Thing realizes that Superman is overexerting himself quite a bit. I just want to stop for a second and talk about that bottom left panel. Swamp Thing's
You mean
face.
oh, I thought you were talking about the panel on the right where Superman turned into a caveman.
I mean, we could talk about that one too, but I'm talking about where we have the outline of Swamp Thing's face and it's colored green. Like, what the. It was rushed. How do you have such a lack of pride in your art that you let this out the door? I mean, it's terrible.
It's got to be editorial. It has to be editorial, like just making the stand of like, we don't care. I mean, the book cost 75 cents at the time. I could see them thinking kids are paying 75 cents for this book. It doesn't have to look great. Just get it out.
Hmm. So, did you have something to say about the panel on the right with Superman?
Yeah, what the hell happened to Superman? That is the worst Superman face I've ever seen drawn. I could find a picture on DeviantArt by a 12-year-old that looks better than that. I don't mean to insult the man, but that is just that is awful.
I agree with you. This face is just terrible. Again, editorial, rushing things. You're right about finding a 12-year-old on and deviant art that could do better than that. Is it me, or do the eye heat lasers look almost computer generated, which they didn't even have at the time yet in comics?
It looks like all he did was he just did a couple of squiggly lines. Okay, that could be fire. He'll let the colorist go in and do the rest of the work.
Yeah, but how do the colorists do that? I mean, the art's not great, but that color is just striking.
The color is beautiful. If they could have had a little bit better pencils or even inks, the inker could have come in and finished up on that or something. I think it would have looked a little bit better. Like it's good the way it is,
Yeah,
but it feels like it's missing something to me. A little bit more detail.
I agree. It is missing detail, but I'm just like,
But the
nothing else in the book looks like that. Something about that coloring is just phenomenal.
I'd be curious if it was watercoloring. I don't know how
Hmm,
colorists worked in the 80s, what they did. So it would be interesting if it was watercolor.
it would. And actually, if you go back up on that same page and you look at the S on Superman's chest, on that top
Hmm.
right panel, that actually does look a lot like watercolor there. I think he might be right. I think he might be onto something here, that that is watercolor, because you can kind of see how almost how the colors just bleed out a little bit from the lines.
That's interesting. If that's what it was, that's talent. I've worked in watercolor. It is a hard medium to control
Hmm.
unless you know what you're doing. I don't.
Next, Swamp Thing realizes he has to calm Superman down, but he doesn't know how when Swamp Thing can't reach him. Then Swamp Thing gives a knowing look at the meteorite fungus. Swamp Thing makes physical contact with one hand with the fungus and places his other hand on Clark's shoulder.
So that's actually a smart move. Because I just read the book. I think I was like you by this. I was trying to get done with it. I wanted to get through because this is not what I thought it was going to be. Looking back on it now, okay, there was actually some smart, creative decisions in this story.
Yeah, there's a few peaks in here. I agree, though. I think it's mostly valleys. This causes Swamp Thing to actually go into Clark's hallucination of the planet of Krypton, and the two begin to talk to each other, although Superman is still freaking out, talking about how Swamp Thing can't keep him here. Superman escaped his dead planet. He can't be here. During Clark's freakout, he crushes Swamp Thing's hand, and Swamp Thing simply grows back his hand and advises Superman that Superman is dying.
You know what the funny thing is? I want to say back in like the 70s and 80s, it felt like every other issue of a Superman comic, Superman was dying.
It felt like every other Superman comic. What?
It felt like every other issue of a Superman comic, Superman would be dying.
I haven't read that much pre-crisis Superman. Well, I read a bunch of Silver Age stuff, but it's been a good 20 years since I read that, so I don't remember that much detail about it. I feel like I've seen a lot of covers where Superman is about to die. One thing I did find interesting about this page is if this was pre-crisis and Swamp Thing is growing back his hand that quickly, I think that this is, I don't know. It's almost like foreshadowing, because I feel like at the point where this would have been written, that Swamp Thing wasn't that talented at growing himself back that quickly. It's something it took him a while to figure out, and I feel like, given how far pre-crisis this is, he didn't know that yet. So maybe Alan
That
Moore was, hey, I know what's going to be happening in the future. Swamp Thing's going to get better about growing things. I don't know. That's just kind of the thought I had when I saw it.
it's kind of interesting because also he's still got that gaping hole in his chest. And Alan Moore's first issue of Swamp Thing, the dude died from a riddle of bullets from basically the military. I feel like continuity wise, I don't quite know where this is landing within Crisis time and Saga of the Swamp Thing time. I don't know exactly what the time period on this is because we're getting an earlier look of Swamp Thing physically, but we're getting the powers of later Swamp Thing.
Hmm.
Maybe we're just reading too much into stuff.
I think you might be right about that, because I don't think Alan Moore put that much thought into it. Although I do know Alan Moore was a Superman fan. What was his really famous for the man who has everything? or something very similar to that title.
The two that I know of was that one, and it was I forget what the name of it was, but there was the last Superman story ever told. That was a really good one too. The funny thing is that's what I was expecting going into this because I've read those. I haven't read this one
Nobody ever
before.
talks about this one. I wonder why.
Yeah, this is not Alan Moore's Superman that I'm used to.
So Superman continues freaking out and burns some more plants around him. Honestly, it's getting a little old. Swamp Thing tries to convince Superman that Swamp Thing is a friend, and Superman is trying to overexert himself. The Superman must calm down or die. Superman punches Swamp Thing away from him, refusing to give up. Swamp Thing just stands up and tells Superman to stop fighting before you die. So Swamp Thing seems to recognize that Superman is very, very powerful. Yet Superman is using all of his most powerful abilities. He's overexerting himself. He's not holding back at all. And it is not affecting Swamp Thing in the least. How much more powerful is Swamp Thing than Superman? And Swamp Thing himself doesn't even realize he's that powerful when he's sitting here taking blows and heat vision and being thrown across Krypton by the most powerful man on Earth and the most powerful thing on Earth. And Swamp Thing's just like shrugging it off.
With Swamp Thing being an elemental and being the representative of the green, does that technically count as magic? Because if it does,
Ooh.
yeah, we all know the connection there.
Hmm. If you're a viewer and you happen to know, does the green count as magic? Is it like nature magic? Does poison ivy has had an effect on Superman, hasn't she? Like when she
He
uses
has.
her poisonous lipstick. Hmm. I think you're onto something here. I think maybe that's why Swamp Thing is not as vulnerable to Superman as other creatures are.
Honestly, if it wasn't for the feet in that panel, I think that would actually be kind of like a decent looking panel. But the feet ruin it. The feet totally ruin it.
Man, I thought the feet were perfect. That makes me laugh because you can just see Swamp Thing just flying off the panel. Most of his body is gone. We're just seeing him from like the shins down.
It's like something out of a damn cartoon.
It's almost like we're reading
It's like
comics.
something
Hey.
to me. That's like something Popeye would do to Bluto.
Yeah, you're right. Swamp Thing continues to talk to Superman and seems to finally be getting through, with Superman remembering all the negative effects of the fungus. Swamp Thing tells Superman to touch his hand, and Swamp Thing submerges Superman into the green. I don't think we've seen anything like this happen before.
I don't think so. Like nothing's standing out in my mind of what we've read so far.
Because I think that really
That,
goes back to saying the green is actually magic because it has that much of an effect on Superman. I think you're really onto something there. That's a really good point. And the image on the bottom of page 20 with Swamp Thing and Superman holding hands while Swamp Thing is touching the fungus and Superman is laying in Swamp Thing's lap. To me, that's a very powerful image. Swamp Thing is truly showing how much he cares for Superman. I thought this was a very touching moment, despite the lack of detail in the art.
even though the art isn't that spectacular, it's still done well. It's a really good panel. Actually, the bottom half of this page I really like. The top half is kind of like that's not that great looking. It's not like the worst that we've seen, obviously, in this book, but it's not that great. But the bottom half I actually enjoy of like Superman getting enveloped into the green, the way you see his face go from like rage to he's starting to calm down, and then that last panel with Swamp Thing basically holding him. That little section right there to me was really good.
I agree. The level of care that was shown in this, I wish the level of detail matched the feelings, the emotions that it gets across. Yeah, Veitch does a really good job of that here. Swamp Thing drops the rock with the fungus. Way to treat a priceless meteorite, Swamp Thing. And notes that Superman's fever is breaking and the storm is over. Superman will live! Yay! Superman doesn't die for another 7, 8 years. He's got time.
You can criticize him for dropping the meteorite, but at the same time, Swamp Thing doesn't know the value of this precious space rock. To him, it's just a rock with fungus on it.
Yeah, but he knows it has an alien fungus on it. I mean, that's got to mean something. Alec Holland was a scientist. I feel like you should understand that.
Okay, that is a good point. I did not think about that. That is true. So yeah, there should have been a little bit more value to it. But it also tried to kill Superman, so maybe there's a personal vendetta.
Yeah, you're right there. I follow that. Superman wakes the next day and notices that all of his powers have been restored. He gives himself a shave using his laser and heat vision in a mirror. He picks up the meteorite and then launches himself upwards.
The only thing I'm going to say about this is that the two things that I have to mention are one, I have always loved it in movies. I think we've seen it in movies. I know we've seen it in Superman the animated series, and I've seen it in the comic books before. I love it when Superman uses his heat vision to shave.
I said the same thing in my notes.
There's something so cool about that. It's so ordinary, so dumb, but it is so cool. And
Yes.
then I don't know like how much steroids I have to do, but I want to get to Superman's level to where I can just flex my damn muscles and my clothes just fall to shreds because that is the ultimate superpower.
It really is. The next page, Superman flies out of the swamp, leaving his wrecked car behind, while Swamp Thing looks up from the ground smiling. Then we see Swamp Thing walking off into the morning swamp, happy as can be. He left the wreck. He littered. I mean, it's Superman. He left an entire car in the swamp.
I feel like Swamp should be more pissed off at that than Superman should. Superman's not going to care probably. He's just happy to be alive.
You're right.
He's probably still coming off the buzz of like being in the green and all that stuff. So he's ecstatic. He's happy.
Okay, Superman is drugged up by the green. I see that. I'll acknowledge
Yeah,
that.
Swamp Thing should be pissed because yeah, he just littered.
Right.
So that would be a little annoying.
But no, Swamp Thing is happy. He's got this goofy grin on his face. One of the better drawn faces in the book, which Veitch is chef's kiss when it comes to faces. Overall, this issue was worthless. Superman leaves behind the wrecked car in the swamp. There's no acknowledgement from Superman that Swamp Thing saved his life. I originally put there was a giant continuity error putting Lana Lang next to Superman as some kind of reporter. She isn't. She's a farmer. But we kind of discussed that this was probably pre-crisis. So that part at least is explained. I do want to talk a little bit more about how bad the art on the issue is. Well, hang on. I'll let you respond to my last statement before I move on.
Which last statement, the Lana Lang one, or just like it was pointless?
The fact that it was pointless, worthless. There was no value in in this issue.
I cannot say that this issue was pointless. Granted, it took 20 something pages for it to happen, but we did just discover a new power for Superman. That is pretty important.
New power for Superman? What are you talking about?
Yeah, that he can just rip his clothes off just by flexing a damn muscle. I mean, that's a power that has never been seen before in any Superman comic until this particular issue. This is a milestone.
Okay, I can give you that one. Let's talk about how bad the art is on the issue. There are almost no backgrounds on any of the panels. Most of the coloring, the red and blue of Superman's costume aside, and the I beams that we talked about with the red and yellow, those looked phenomenal. But the rest of the coloring looked sloppy to me. You can actually see where they were kind of coloring outside the lines. But if the whole thing was done in watercolor, I could almost excuse it. But it doesn't all look like it was done in watercolor. So I'm kind of the lack of detail throughout the book. I found it pretty awful.
It wasn't the best art by far, especially since we know exactly how good Rick Veitch, however you want to pronounce his name, can be. I gotta say, this is definitely not at the top of his list of like best work.
And that's what makes it so disappointing. We know how good his work can be, how amazing. Like I have gushed about his art in the past. When I saw he did this issue, I was stoked to read this issue, and then so let down.
I'm coming from a totally different place than you are. We've both grown up on comics, but like I've grown up on, I didn't start getting newer comics until I was 10 or 15 years old. Before then, I was reading old stuff that my brother had or that we would have found in thrift stores. And I grew up on 70s, 80s books. I wasn't reading them, but I was constantly flipping through them. So I'm used to this kind of artwork being what it is. So it doesn't take me out the way it does with you have like this high standard stick up your butt of like what you consider this great artwork. And I understand, but it doesn't take me out the way that it does you. So it is definitely not his best work. It's kind of sad to see an artist that you really, really like and admire, and then you see them have to rush it, and you're just like, ooh, that's not good.
Here's what I wrote. Basically, this whole issue to me was just a giant letdown and unnecessary. There is no reason for this story to exist. Swamp Thing and Superman did not become friends through this story. It didn't advance the Swamp Thing story in any way. It didn't seem to advance Superman's story in any way, aside from the clothes busting off. It was kind of neat seeing how much Swamp Thing cared for Superman, but I also have to wonder why Swamp Thing cared for Superman. It didn't make a lot of sense. And would it kill Superman to say thank you?
I'm assuming Superman did not realize that Swamp Thing had saved him, but at the same time, that does diminish Superman's powers because the page before he says he hears a baby crying in Harlem. You can hear a baby crying in Harlem, but you can't hear Swamp Thing shambling his little swampy ass off into the sunset. It doesn't make any sense. I will agree, this book was pointless. It's not even Moore's best Superman work. It is a disappointment. I will have to admit that. I give that credit. That is, the writing is good as far as like Alan Moore is a master wordsmith. He uses words in like a way that baffles my imagination. But the story itself didn't go anywhere. It didn't need to happen.
So you kind of touched on it a little bit. We touched on it a little bit before. This issue was really boring. I was literally nodding off while I was reading the issue. The plot was just not there for me. Was it really written? Were the words good? Yes. But the overall plot, no. I actually put in my notes. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to agree with you. Since I have the second, I do want to throw out there the fact if this was a Marvel comic book, we would have seen at least out of the 20, was it 24, 25 pages or whatever of this particular book, half of the book would have been them beating the crap out of each other. Like every time you see the Thing and the Hulk together, they punch each other in the face like most people shake hands.
Yes.
At least if this was a Marvel comic, we would have got a big action scene. This was just, okay, Superman's sick.
Would Swamp Thing and Superman punching each other a lot more? Would that have been a positive thing for you or a negative thing for you?
I'm going to say positive, honestly, because at least at that point there would have been senseless violence action going on. Okay, I'm here for that. I can't honestly say I've ever read a very well written Thing versus Hulk comic book, but they're fun as hell to look at because the beating the crap out of each other is fun.
I did put in my notes that I have said a lot of negative things about this issue, and I want to end talking about everything, not including my synopsis, but just I do want to end on a positive note. And that was I thought it was really cool how they show how Superman shaves. Can't remember where I've seen the heat laser vision with a mirror trick, but I have seen it before, and it was really cool to see that. I put that in my notes. We kind of talked about it already, but I thought it was cool that we both picked up on that. I think now that I'm sitting here talking about it, it was in Lois and Clark. I think that's where I saw him shaving with a mirror before.
Okay, I said the first time I saw it was Superman the animated series. It was the episode with, how do you say his name? Mitzel Spitlick.
Mit-
Mixel Spitlick.
Mitzelplick. I actually sent you a picture. I sent you a text message with a picture
Yeah,
how to pronounce his name. But yes, maybe I did see it in Superman the animated series. I thought it was Lois and Clark, or maybe it was both. It's possible it happens in both.
I haven't seen Lois and Clark. I did not grow up on that. It was too sitcomish for me.
But Terry
For like,
Hatcher.
I wanted more. But hey, I'm not denying. I'll give Dean Cain credit. At the time, Dean Cain did not look terrible as Superman.
Mm-mm.
Now he looks like he would be a bloated piece of crap. But that's just, that's just my opinion. I'm not here to like voice that.
I'm pretty
I
sure
do
his
want
his.
to end on.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I want to end on, for me, on one particular funny thing. So I don't know. How did you read this? Did you read this in a trade online? Like, how did you read this issue?
I had to read this one through DC Universe Unlimited or DC. What the heck do they call their online service? The DC Online Service is how I read it. DC Infinite. I read it through DC Infinite.
On the final page, did it tell you what the next issue was going to be of DC Comics Presents? Did it have that little caption at the bottom of what the next issue you're looking
I
forward
see
to is?
it's supposed to be Superman and Supergirl. It's a date.
That to me, when I read that, I laughed out loud. I don't think they thought that out properly when they were working it.
I see what you're going for there. Overall, this issue for me gets a 0.0 0.2 out of 5
Oh,
extinct Kryptonian beasts. This is the lowest score I've given any book since we started this YouTube channel. I expected a lot more from Veitch. I expected a lot more from Alan Moore. It feels like they just phoned in the entire issue and didn't really want to do it.
oh, wow. I'm going to be a little bit more generous. I'm going to give it a 1. That's still the lowest for me. I will give it a 1 because I at least got a little bit of enjoyment out of it with a couple of things that happened. I got some laughs out of it. I don't think they were intentional laughs that were supposed to happen, but I did chuckle.
You know
So
what?
it wasn't.
I'm going to change my rating, and I'm changing it simply because of that next issue, Superman and Supergirl. It's a date. It is now a 0.3 out of 5. 0.3 because of that last little bit. I give it a 0.1 over that.
I'm sticking with the 1. I was disappointed. I was expecting a lot more from Alan Moore Superman. Although, to be fair, I do have to say, now that I think about it, every time I've read an Alan Moore Superman, it's not what I expected it to be. Like, I'm expecting it to be Superman, like being Superman, fighting. I don't think I've ever seen him really kicking any butt in an Alan Moore issue
Alan Moore
of
doesn't really
psychological crap.
write a lot of fight comics. Watchmen may be an exception. But even then, there's not a lot of fighting in Watchmen. And there's some. There's some action and fighting, just not a lot of it.
He deals with the psychological stuff, which is
Yeah,
it's cool from time to time. But it's like it makes you think, like, yeah, maybe it's a good thing we didn't get like a 30 issue run of Alan Moore on Superman.
right? I think that's probably about it for today's show. I do want to say thank you everyone for joining us tonight. Really glad that you're here with us watching. We do this for the love of the comics medium. No matter how much we complain about the comic, we do still love the comics medium, and the good in general tends to outweigh the bad.
I mean, how much you complain? I'm going to go ahead and pimp our Patreon again because you can never pimp these things enough. Join us on Patreon. Get access to that post crisis chat book club. That's a really cool thing. I definitely think everyone should check it out because it'll be a lot of fun. And I'm not just saying that so we can hopefully get some money. We would really appreciate it if you guys would start commenting at some point so we could start reading those because, that would be kind of fun, I think, for everybody.
Especially the Patreon because we broke, son. Also, don't forget to check the description for our links on our Amazon affiliate page. You can pick up the book. Well, I don't know if you can pick this one up. Most of the time, we're talking about Swamp Thing or we're talking about Batman, and you can pick those books up in various formats. If you click the Amazon affiliate link to make the purchase, a little bit of your purchase comes back to the channel, and it doesn't cost you anything extra, and it really helps support the channel. You look like you were about to say something, Cookie.
I was actually going to point out this. I believe this issue is did a trade paperback of various Alan Moore issues throughout the DC universe.
Hmm.
And I believe this one was in there.
If that book is in print, I'll link it below.
Because that's actually how I was going to read it if I couldn't find the single issue. Speaking of socials and stuff like that, you can always follow us on Blue Sky. The link is in the description below. On there, we're going to announce when we post new episodes. And again, I can't stress this enough, but if you guys could like this video, give the channel a subscribe, comment as soon as you see, the video pop up. Those things, see a lot of people on YouTube say it seems like such a small thing, but it's such a big thing to help the channel go. I never understood it until, we started getting our own channel. It helps. So
It
do
really
it.
does. I want to ask you a quick question. You had the individual issue there. Was that your brother's issue?
Yes.
Did he collect DC Presents, or did he just pick it up because it was Swamp Thing and or Superman?
He actually picked it up because it was Alan Moore. Alan Moore was on the list of his top writers. Because
Okay.
of him, I can't say I have everything Alan Moore, but I at least have everything DC wise Alan Moore did.
Okay, that's pretty cool. I was just curious about that. When we were talking about the Amazon affiliate link, I was like, you had that issue, and I know your brother was a big influence on your comics, so that's always cool to find out why he bought an issue that he did. Lastly, I want to give a big shout out to our editor, Nacho King.
Yes, we could not do this without you, Big Daddy. We appreciate it. We love you.
So for tonight's sign off phrase, may you never burn a hole through your shaving mirror. Please leave in his reaction.
Just bleep out the F word. I love it. I love it. That was good. That came out of nowhere.
Truth be told, I thought of it right as we were coming up to the end there. That's one thing about being a dungeon master, you learn to improvise a lot. Thank you everybody for joining us tonight. I hope you have a good night.